So I'm thought this was Centel. I thought this was Centel. Annie Costable, is this in fact a Allery Costable account? Is this like a Centel account? Because that's the only thing I can think off the top of my head is that this shit's Centel. That's the only thing I can think of. Because apparently, the WNBA has proposed cutting team housing, whatever about that. As far as we're aware, not even as far as we're aware, realistically, team housing only really matters for like a very small amount of players. Like I think they have like they put you up in these tiny apartments, and I think now with the amount of money in endorsements, I don't think that many players use team housing. I don't think that affects as many people as you would expect, but it does affect the hardship players. Like I think it's an annoyance, but I think of all things, it's not even enough money. So it realistically, WNBA shouldn't be looking to cut the corner. But this is the crazy thing. Um, we have training camp starting in mid-March. College basketball ends in mid-April. College basketball ends in mid-April. So they literally will have they're not allowed to start training camp more than a month before the start of the season. What does that mean? The draft will happen during the season. During the season. So like they want the draft to happen during the season. So like rookies don't get to do a training camp with their team or anything. Rookies randomly join their teams. So basically you will have to sign all of your play. You will either have to go out with like 10 players if you want to bring in rookies, or you'll have to sign a whole bunch of players and then cut them as soon as your rookies come in. Like it doesn't make any sense. It makes absolutely no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. I'm going to be very honest. It makes no sense whatsoever. And I was reading this, I was like, this can't be real. And I was reading through this article. The current CBA will allow the WNBA to move the start of training camp up to April the 1st at the earliest, which doesn't matter for Unrivaled. I think that's part of the reason why Unrivaled's gone earlier this year. It's basically starting a month earlier. It doesn't really matter for Unrivaled. It doesn't really matter for Project B. They can organize it a little bit earlier. But it says the season currently permitted to run through October 31st. In recent years, training camps began the end of April, weeks after conclusion of the tournament, the WNBA draft. Last October, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert announced the league's decision to increase the regular season to a 44-game slate. The schedule will change, including the final switch into 7 games. Multiple sources have interpreted the WNBA's latest proposal as directly interfering with the timeline of the NCAA tournament and would have rookies arriving weeks into the season. Prioritization, and the thing of prioritization is like there are certain as annoying as it is, it's not the be all and end all because you can't. There are certain countries you can't play in. There's a lot of like players that are getting let out of contracts, and the obviously the prioritization rule only matters like for players that have played a certain amount of years. There's a lot of players realistically long term who will be having to go play in certain leagues. As you can see, like I think Leo Phoebus can play one more year in Spain, and then I think it's next year, which is why she signed up for Project B. I think it's the same with like you can play. I think you can play in Czech Republic. You can play for a lot. There's a lot of countries and teams you can play for, but obviously they have a letter of clearance system. You can play in both. Obviously, there's Malonga shit that's going on that she might be allowed to play, but it says here like with the prioritization rule, they have to be there at the start of training camp or face a suspension, which obviously was brought in because players were showing up a little bit late. And if you miss training camp, you're done for the season, which is something that they may want to get rid of. But I cannot believe that obviously they proposed late in the season, including an earlier start date, expect to interfere with the other leagues. So I think when I say this, I think this is what it is. This is the players being like, oh, the season needs to be longer. And then the league going, well, we can't actually play a game after October the 31st. So if you want the season to be longer, therefore we have to start earlier. Therefore, there's not going to be rookies. There's not going to be rookies. Rookies aren't allowed to come in. Like, I think this is Okay, yeah, we will offer you what you want. We will absolutely offer you what you want, but this is not feasible. And I kind of, not that I kind of agree with that point, but it's like, training camp doesn't need to be 3 weeks. Prioritization doesn't need to necessarily be a thing. It should be the players have to be there for game one. Every player has to be there for game one or face suspension, and they have to be in market by game one. Maybe that should be a thing if you want to put prioritization rule. Maybe the prioritization thing should be you have to be there for 1 week of training camp for the final by the first preseason game, because I think was there 2 weeks between the first preseason game, but then there was like 2 weeks. I think it's only a month of training camp. Like you don't have to. You genuinely you do not have to go out of your have all the games. Like if you add an extra 2 weeks to the season, the only problem is you have a World Cup break next year. You have a World Cup break, which is going to be very, very annoying, I would say, for the league to try to fit in all those games. But they are playing too many games, especially coming off overseas season. It's not quite as bad playing on rival, but the players who played overseas are playing so many games. There needs to be a way of figuring it out, but the problem is the 44 game regular season is hard to deal with. It's really, really difficult to deal with that 44 game regular season. And I wonder what when it's all said and done, I wonder what way they're going to deal with this. I wonder if this is something that the players are going to, have to accept, which they won't. Obviously, they're not going to accept it because the draft will be during the season. Like the draft being during the season is genuinely one of the craziest things. I genuinely think that'd be one of the craziest things. Imagine if you would have to legitimately go and bring in a load of players in the draft time during the season, then cut a load of them. Like that for me, that would make absolutely no sense. That would make absolutely none. But I'm fully convinced this is one of those ones where it's like, yeah, we're going to give you the most dumb. We're going to letter of the law give you exactly what you've asked for, but we will do it in the most dumb way possible. So that letter of the law, we're offering what you want, but realistically, no. We're not giving you what you want. We're going to give you letter of the law what you want, but not exactly what you want. But again, the housing thing is a bit of a weird one again. The problem is, as we've said, when you're up in everyone's pay, the housing thing doesn't matter too much. But there should be a caveat where you have to house temporary players. If there was an asterisk to say you have to house temporary players, then you have to pay for the housing of temporary players, then I'm okay with that. Especially because the housing budget was so small. But the training camp, rookies coming during the season would be the most ridiculous thing I think we will ever have seen. Genuinely. And I wonder what's going to happen. Is it going to be a case where none of the international players come over, or all the international I actually think this is going to affect the EuroLeague season more, because I think the Project B and Unrivaled will work around whatever rules there are, but I think the players playing overseas in Europe or anywhere else just won't be able to. I wouldn't be surprised. But at the same time, look, I don't think this is going to get passed. I definitely think it's not going to get passed.